He used to silence dissenters. Now he's the one on trial. The room fell silent as Karoline Leavitt's hand gripped the witness stand. Her eyes, resolute and unwavering, met Pope Francis. He wasn't just on trial, his entire legacy was. The air inside the packed courtroom felt thick, charged with the weight of history. Outside, protesters chanted, their voices a cacophony of fury and hope. Inside, the press swarmed like vultures, their cameras flashing as if to dissect every micro-expression on the faces of the accused and the accuser. Judges sat rigid in their gowns, their hands clasped so tightly their knuckles whitened. Even the lawyers, seasoned in the art of manipulation, seemed to hold their breath. This was no ordinary trial. This was a reckoning. Karoline's voice, steady but sharp as a scalpel, sliced through the tension. Your Holiness, you once claimed that the Church's role was to protect the innocent. Yet in the years you led California's religious institutions, innocent people were silenced, their voices erased, their lives destroyed. Tell me, where was your protection then? Francis, his face gaunt and pale under the courtroom lights, did not flinch. His hands rested on the polished oak of the witness stand, the crucifix at his side glinting like a weapon. He had ruled California's spiritual domain with an iron hand, his influence stretching from Sacramento to the pews of every cathedral. But now, in this sterile chamber, his power felt brittle. The courtroom erupted with murmurs. A juror leaned back, eyes wide, a reporter's pen screeched against paper, and then from the far end of the gallery a single voice rose above the din, "Remember the radio towers." The name sent a ripple through the room. It was a whisper that had haunted California for years. A secret buried beneath layers of bureaucracy, fear, and complicity. The radio towers, a network of surveillance stations erected under Francis's directive, had allegedly intercepted every form of dissenting communication. Sermons, articles, even private conversations. Critics of the Church's growing political clout were labeled heretics, their voices deemed threats to moral order. Karoline had spent the past 5 years unraveling this web, her relentless pursuit of justice making her a target. Threats had come in the form of anonymous letters, shadowy figures outside her office, and a single bullet that narrowly missed her car. But she had pressed on, driven by the memory of one woman who had vanished under Francis's watch, a journalist named Elena Ruiz, whose final article exposed the radio tower's existence. Now the evidence of that truth was finally here. The prosecution's lead investigator, a tall man with a scar running from his temple to his jaw, rose from his seat. His voice was low, deliberate. Your Honor, we call as our first witness Reverend Marcus Hale, former chaplain to the defendant. Hale entered the courtroom, his steps slow, burdened by something unseen. He took the stand, and as he spoke, the room seemed to inhale collectively. I served Pope Francis for 17 years, Hale began, his voice shaking. I believed in him, I believed in the mission. But I saw what he did to those who disagreed with him. When Elena Ruiz began investigating the radio towers, Francis didn't stop her, he escalated. He had her surveillance files compiled. Her every move, every word, every thought, and then when she got too close, when she published her findings, she disappeared. The word hung in the air like a scream. Karoline leaned forward. Reverend Hale, you said the Church escalated. What does that mean? Hale's eyes locked onto her, searching for courage. He found it. It means they used the radio towers to isolate her. Every contact she had was severed. Her phone calls were monitored, her emails were deleted, her meetings were watched. And when she refused to stop, when she refused to be afraid, they took her. I was ordered to lie about her disappearance, to say she left the country. I refused, I was reassigned, my parish closed, my family was threatened. The courtroom gasped. Francis's lips pressed into a thin line, but his face betrayed nothing. Karoline's next words were a blade. You're saying the Church didn't just silence dissenters, you're saying they orchestrated disappearances. Hale nodded. I'm saying they created a system where the only way to stop the noise was to erase the source. A juror began to sob. The judge tapped his gavel, but the sound was drowned out by the rising tide of voices in the gallery. The second witness was even more explosive. Call Sofia Delgado, the prosecution said. Sofia, a former archivist for the Church, entered the courtroom in a wheelchair, her movements slow, deliberate. She was frail, but her eyes burned with conviction. I worked in the archives of the Vatican State in California, she began. I never knew the full extent of what I was transcribing. At first I thought it was just records. But then I found the files, dozens of them, names, dates, descriptions of neutralization procedures. Examples, let's see. Subject 228, priests calling for transparency in the radio towers. Method, covert reassignment to non-English speaking parishes. Status, compliance. Subject 407, journalist Elena Ruiz. Method. Surveillance escalation. Status, disappearance. Sophia paused, her voice breaking. I tried to report this, I tried to leave. Francis's people followed me, they threatened my family. My son was beaten outside his school. My daughter was taken to a psychiatric ward. I had no choice. I kept the files, I made copies, I hid them. She reached into her coat and pulled out a folder. The judge ordered it to be sealed, but Karoline's eyes locked onto it. The symbol on the cover, a silver cross etched with the letters RT, was unmistakable. The radio towers, Francis stood, his voice cold. These are fabrications, smears. My people are not guilty of crimes that never occurred. Karoline rose, her voice cutting through the chaos. But you are guilty of something worse, Your Holiness. You're guilty of creating a system that allowed these crimes to happen, of enabling a culture of fear where your enemies didn't just vanish, they were made to believe they had no power at all. The courtroom fell silent again. Then from the gallery a cry, "Where is Elena Ruiz?" No one answered. The next piece of evidence was the most damning. A recording leaked weeks ago had finally surfaced. A voice, distorted but unmistakable, issuing orders from inside the Vatican State's secure facility. Karoline had spent nights listening to it, her hands trembling as she pieced together the truth. Now the prosecution played it. The voice on the tape, priority subject, Elena Ruiz. Undercover team to extract her from the San Francisco district. All surveillance to be escalated. No civilian casualties. The church must protect its image. Understood, the room erupted. Karoline's hands clenched into fists. This is the voice of the defendant, she said, her voice rising. Not just a voice, a command, a death sentence. Francis sat motionless, his face a mask. But Karoline was not done. She turned to the judge, her gaze piercing. Your Honor, the church has spent decades using its influence to tighten its grip on California. It's not just about faith, it's about control. About ensuring that no one dares to speak against them. She paused, letting her words settle. The radio towers were not just a surveillance system, they were a weapon. And the time to stop this weapon is now. The courtroom was alive with energy, the tension so thick it felt like a tangible thing. The press recorded furiously, protesters outside screaming. Then from the back of the courtroom a figure stood. It was Francis's defense attorney, a man known for his ruthless tactics. He rose, his voice calm but venomous. This trial is a farce, a witch hunt. The prosecution has no proof, no physical evidence. Just the testimony of two broken souls who have been manipulated by the very system they claim to expose. Karoline met his gaze, unflinching. You think they're broken? Or do you think they're brave? The attorney's hands tightened into fists. The church has always protected the innocent. You think we've done wrong because you've been lied to? Karoline leaned forward, her voice softer now but no less powerful. I think you've lied to America, to California, to every person who believed in the light of this institution. You didn't protect the innocent, you hunted them. The room was breathless. The judge called for a recess. As the courtroom emptied, Karoline remained on the stand, her eyes fixed on the crucifix on Francis's desk. It gleamed under the harsh lights, its edges sharp, its symbolism cruel. In that moment, Karoline knew the truth. This trial was not just about one man. It was about the power of a system that had twisted faith into fear. And she would not stop until it was shattered. As the final gavel struck, the words of the protesters outside echoed in her mind. This trial isn't the end, it's the warning. The air was still, but the storm was coming.